Hello friends and welcome to my channel. Well, today we're going to continue working on our MJ's messenger bag, and for those of you who may have just found me, you don't know what I'm talking about, it is this messenger bag right here. This is a ByAnnie pattern. It's not a free pattern, so I can't give you all the measuring instructions and all that, but if you want to purchase the pattern and sew along with us, you can. I know there's a bunch of people out there sewing this with me, so really excited to be doing this with everyone. Today we're going to be working on some of the strapping, the carrying strap, the little tabs, things like that. Today's video is for Saturday, and then this coming Monday is a holiday, Martin Luther King Day. So on Monday, I'm going to release the next part, which will be some of the pockets and zippers and things like that, so we can get this going a little bit faster. My daughter's about to go back to school, so I want to finish this really, really soon. So we'll do that on Monday, and then the following Saturday, we'll see what we have left to do. We'll see how far we get, and hopefully we can get this start to look like a bag really, really soon. Don't forget, also, I've got the UFO challenge going on right now. A bunch of you have joined my Facebook group and downloaded the form and posted it, and that's great. I'm so excited to see that. And some of you have even already finished UFO, which, bravo, that's awesome. I have not gotten to any of my UFOs, but I'm really excited and inspired that you guys are doing them. So that's going on as well. So let's get started with the sewing for today's portion of the MJ's messenger bag. Okay, so the first thing we're going to work on is on page 4, which is the starting of the sewing after all that cutting. And we're going to start by making the carrying strap. So I'm going to go ahead and get all the pieces for that. So first it's the fabric, which I have marked. And you're going to need your slider and 2 of your swivel hooks. And then of course you're going to need your strapping that's going to go inside. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take these apart and turn my iron on. There we go. And we are going to sew these strips together on the short end. So right sides together, we're going to sew these together to make one long strip to cover this strapping. So let's do that first. I'm glad we're finally starting to sew. Okay, now I'm going to backstitch this because we're going to make this eventually into a tube that we're going to have to turn. And as you're turning it, there's a possibility if you don't backstitch that you can pull your stitches out there. So I'm going to go ahead and backstitch, snip off this thread, and then we're going to press this open. And now I'm not a big fan of pressing open, but in this case, if you don't press this piece open and you press it one way or the other, when you turn your tube, it can get stuck and prevent your tube from turning. So this part you need to press open. Okay, so now the next thing you have to do is you need to fold this in half, right sides together, this whole piece, and then we're going to stitch down this side. Now, I don't remember in the instructions if it says to press this or not before you stitch it, but I'm going to, just to make it easier. I think it's easier to hold it in place, and I also think it's easier when you turn it later. So I'm not going to use magic juice. I'm just going to give this a little light press to crease it. Press the fabric there. It's got a little crease from where it was on the bolt. Now I do usually starch or best press all my fabrics before I sew with them when I quilt, but This is not a quilt. This is a bag. So I did not do that with these fabrics. I want them to remain a little bit more pliable, so that way when we're putting pieces together, when we're turning fabrics, when we're doing those things, they will give me a little bit more stretch and play than they would if I would have starched them. I find that to be a little bit easier for a bag. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to, after you've pressed this, and you don't have to press it if you don't want to, I just like, that's my preference, is we're going to take this and we're going to stitch 1/4 inch all the way down. And again, I'm going to back stitch at the top and at the end, because when we turn this tube, there's a good chance you can pull those stitches out if you're not back stitched or anchor stitched or whatever you want to call it. So let's go ahead and do that. Put this aside. Good idea to check too, and I did before I started this, to make sure you have a full bobbin. And you're just stitching 1/4 inch down that open side. Got some stray threads on there. Probably from whenever this fabric touched another project I was working on. And again, back stitch at the other end. So you'll thank me later, because if you've ever made a tube and you haven't back stitched, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you want to try it without back stitching, you'll figure it out pretty quick what I'm talking about. It tends to pop apart, and that can be a problem. Okay, so let me move this stuff again. We are going to give this a press, and you want to press this seam open as well. So you're going to kind of want to stick your finger in here and open this. And this part can be a little tricky and take a little bit of time, but we're going to go ahead and get this open. And we're just going to press a little bit at a time so I can make sure that that seam stays. You want it in the middle, because when we put this, turn this right side out and put the strapping in, this seam is going to be on the inside of your strap. So let me grab my strap here. So this is the strap that I've already made on my bag. So as you can see, that center is where it's going to be this seam right here. So we want that in the middle on the back, so that way when your strap is done, that's right in the middle and you can't see it. Okay? Grab the iron. So take your time. This is going to be not a quick process. And as you're going, make sure you press the sides really flat too. That'll help you get the strap through. If there's any like bulk or anything, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So try to get that as flat as you can. All right, I'm going to keep going on this, and I will come back after it's done. The next thing after this is finished, you need to turn this tube. So I'm going to finish ironing all of this, pressing all this, and then I'm going to turn the tube, and we'll come back and go to the next step. Okay, so I've got my tube all turned, and I need to press it, but I wanted to show you guys there are turning tips in the pattern of things you can do to turn this. I use a tube turner. Now you can get this on Amazon. Some quilt shops have it, but it's just basically a plastic, almost looks like a PVC pipe, but a small one, that you can stick inside. And then when you want to go to, you bunch up the fabric like that, and then you push the wrong side of the fabric. Now I'm not going to do it because I have the right side out already. you push the fabric through and then use the little wooden dowel to push the right side out. And eventually it gets to the other end of the tube and you just pull the whole thing out. It comes out really easily. So you might want to get a tube turner or follow the tips in the pattern to turn. It does take a little bit to turn this if you don't have something. You can sew a piece of fabric on the end and put a safety pin on and pull that through and get your tube to turn. There's lots of different ways. There's YouTube videos out there, so I would check those out. Right now I'm just going to give this a good press so that my tube gets nice and flat. That'll make it easier to insert the strapping, which is what we're going to do next. But I just wanted to mention that about turning the tube and the different ways you can do it. All right, I'll be back when I get this all pressed because it's boring for you guys to watch me press this. And we will put the strapping inside this tube. Okay, so I've got my tube all turned and pressed. The next thing we're going to do is get our long piece of strapping. And you can use a bodkin or a safety pin. I prefer a safety pin. I've tried to do this with a bodkin and I'll get half, because this is such a long piece of strapping that I've gotten halfway through and the bodkin like slipped off because the strapping material is slick. So don't stick it in the very end because it might pull through, but I would stick a safety pin down about a half an inch. And then you can start to feed this into your fabric tube. It's going to take a little to get it going. And if you made this correct, it should just fit. But once you get it going, it usually slides on pretty well until you get to that point where you joined your straps. So if you remember, I was talking about that. Where's that? Right here. This, you'll have a little bit of, you'll have to kind of pull it through a little bit, and that's where that safety pin comes in handy. So we're just going to slide this in. As you can see, it just slides right in. We want to keep it all going the same direction. Make sure this isn't twisted at all. You don't want it twisted in the strap or in the strapping because you have to take it all back out and start over again. It's no fun. All right. So I'm going to pull this all the way through and then we'll come back and go through the next step, which is folding the ends and then top stitching this piece all the way around. Now, make sure at this point that your seam is in the center on the one side, because that's the side that's going to be down that you're not going to see when you're carrying this bag. Okay? Okay, so I've got my tube all pulled through. I've got my strapping pulled through. And what it says in the instructions is wherever the strapping is on the inside, you want to cut, you're going to have excess fabric on both ends. You want to cut that excess fabric where you have a half an inch hanging over on both sides. So then what you're going to want to do before we stitch this is you're going to want to fold these raw edges in right to the strapping. And I know that's kind of hard to see, but the strapping's right inside there. And we're going to fold this in to make a nice edge that won't have raw fabric. It's a little tricky to do this, so just take your time. You want it to be all folded nice and neat. You don't want to spend this much time and energy on this bag to not have it finished well, because this bag does take a bit of time. This bag is probably the one that I've spent the most time on of any bag that I've made. So just take a minute to get it folded all in. You want it nice and flat. So just keep messing with it. And then I already did this side, and as you can see, I've got that folded flat, and I clipped it with a clip to hold it in place because the strapping inside can shift. And I want it to stay there so that way when we sew this, the strapping and the fabric will still line up. Almost there. I'm trying to make sure my fabric is straight and even all the way around. Now that one side is up against the strapping, so it's laying flatter. It's the side that's not against the strapping that takes a little bit of manipulation. There we go. Once you're happy with that, it doesn't say this in the instructions, but I would clip it to hold it still. Or if you've got glue, you could like put a little dot of glue there. That would work too. So now after you get that done, all turned, strapping in, those edges turned, you're going to want to stitch all the way around this thing, top stitch. And if you want to use a little bit of a bigger stitch for decoration purposes, that would look good. I think I used probably a 2.0 stitch right here on my original strap, and I like the way that looks, so I'm going to do that again. So you're just doing that right along the edge, so like 1/8 of an inch in. I'm trying to see in the instructions if it actually says, I think it just says top stitch. Yeah, it just says top stitch all the way around this, so it doesn't say like 1/4 of an inch, but that's too much. You don't want to do that. So just like 1/8 of an inch right along the edge of your fabric. So let's do that. Let's get this all enclosed so the strapping doesn't move anymore. So I'm going to start on one of the ends. And my stitch length, I usually stitch with a pretty small stitch length. So I'm going to increase it to that 2.0 so the stitches are a little bit bigger. And I'm not going to backstitch until I come back around. And I'm going to go slow till I get to the edge because I really want the stitches to be right on the edge. And I did clip, just for a hint, a couple clips down the length of this just to hold the strapping in place so it's not shifting as I'm going, because if it shifts then you're going to have a funky, you know, your fabric and your strapping aren't going to match up. So all right, now we can go all the way down. Sides, we're going to go down and around the other side, the other ends, and then come back around. So we're just going to do one continuous stitch. This is why you want to make sure your bobbin is full too. So you go all the way around without stopping. With these stripes, it looks like a snake is going across my sewing table. And I will tell you, when this project is over, because you're going through zippers and straps and everything like that, you are definitely going to want to change your needle. You probably should have changed your needle before you started, and I should have mentioned that. And then you're going to want to change your needle at the end, because this project is going to definitely wear out your needle. Okay, went to the end down there. I'm just turning the strap over. I'm going to go down the other side. Okay, I'm getting close to the end, so I'm just going to slow down a little bit so I can pivot in the same spot where I started. Perfect. And then I'm just going to take a couple stitches over that and backstitch to make sure that's all secure. Okay, so there we have it. This strap is all done. It's all top stitched, and we are ready next to install the slider. So let me move all this, get all these pieces, parts that are in the way out, and then we will go to the next part. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install our slider. And I don't know why, but when I made this bag, I felt like the instructions were speaking a foreign language to me. It took me forever to figure out how to put this slider on. I was looking at the pictures, and it's calling one side A and one side B, and you need this here and this there. And I don't know why, but it really, really confused me. So I did watch a couple of videos and that helped. And then I kind of disregarded the instructions and just did it the way the video said, and it came out correct. Because it didn't make sense to me the way they said it to do it. It felt like the strapping was going to come up with the seam on the top, which would be the wrong way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our slider. Now, if you can see that, I don't know if you can in the video, but it's got a slight curve. So the curved top part, that's the top, and this part of the curve is the bottom. So the part like the top of the rainbow is on the top, and the more arch is on the bottom. So I'm going to set that here. But the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn my strap over, and I already did this, but I took, if you guys can see, the little blue marks I made there. I made that with a friction pen. When you fold it over, they want you to fold it and have about 1.5 inches hanging out once you fold it that you're going to stitch to hold that on. I found it easier to mark it. It doesn't say this, but I found it easier to mark it ahead of time rather than to try to manipulate this, hold the fabric, figure out where 1.5 inches is. So I went ahead and made 1.5 inches, and mine just so happened to hit on that line this time on the fabric. So that worked perfect. So with your fabric, the seam side up, you're going to go in from the bottom or the arched part of your slider. You're going to go up from the left-hand side and go down through the right. And I'm going to pull it to where these little markings are right at the end of my slider. And I'm going to put this together. Pull this back just a little bit. Right there. So I'm going to clip this. Let me grab my clips. I just had them. Where did I put them? I don't know where I put them. So most of my clips are actually right now holding like the tabs together, the name tabs together. So I had a couple though, just not sure where I just put them. That's okay. I'll just pin this. I hate pinning, so don't laugh if I stick myself. I don't know if my pins are going to go through this. I have pretty lightweight pins because they're for patchwork. That'll hold it for now. That's good enough. Okay. So I've got my slider here right where I made those marks, which those will iron right back off. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to come down here where that top stitch line was, and we're going to make a square, and then we're going to make an X in the square with our sewing machine. We're going to sew all that. So that'll hold this strap together. So right now, your slider, the arched part should be up here. The bottom part of the rainbow should be down there, and your strapping should be through with the unseamed part on top and the seamed part over here. I hope that makes sense. I know that this, like I said, was the most confusing part of this entire bag for me because for some reason the instructions just didn't make sense to me. So hopefully that will help you guys a little bit. Oh, you know when you put your glasses on your head and you can't find them and they're right on your head in front of you? Here's my clips right here on my sewing machine. All right. So let's sew this. I'm going to go right on the top stitching. I'm going to kind of go slow for this. And you're going to kind of, if you want to draw a square with a friction pen ahead of time, you can. Or you can just sort of wing it and make an imaginary box, which is what I'm going to do. Because I did not draw a box ahead of time. And then I'm going to come straight across. I'm going to make my box first. That's just going to make this really nice and secure. You could just go on your stitch on your, oops, I went one stitch too far. So let me back up. And you could just top stitch on your top stitch lines that are already there, but you don't want this strap to come apart when you're carrying this bag. So this is the best way to keep it really, really secure. And now that I have my box made, I'm going to turn my strap and make the X across the box. So I'm going to go to a diagonal. And then I'm going to go back across, and I'm going to make my X the other way. And we're going to do this a few times. Now, I'm a little paranoid kind of person. And I want to make sure that these stitches have no chance of coming out. So, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to go over the X more than once. That's just me. I want to make sure that these stitches are not going anywhere, that this strap is not coming apart, because what is the worst thing if you are carrying a bag full of stuff? I've been there in an airport where I've had a carrying strap, and this carrying strap stitches come out, and it was by a well-known company that made this bag. And I had a bag then that I had no carrying strap for, and the bag was really heavy, and I had to carry it by like the handles, and about killed myself. So I'm going to make sure that this strap is nice and secure. Okay, and now I'm going to go around the box one more time, all the way around, and then I will stop being OCD and cut my threads. Again, just me. You don't have to go around this many times if you don't want to. I just feel like the more secure it is, the better off it's going to be. And since this is for my daughter, and she's going to carry her college stuff in it, I just want to make sure that this strap is not going to go anywhere. All right, and I'm going to back stitch there. There we go. All right, so I've made a box, and I'm going to trim those threads later because it doesn't look really pretty right now. It's got a couple threads, but for now, that's done. And then we're going to do the next part, which is adding these clips on, which is how you're going to clip it to the sides of your bag. So let me trim these threads, and we'll come back and we'll add those clips. Okay, I've got those threads trimmed. Let's get this swivel hook on, or I called it a clip before. It's technically a swivel hook. Whatever, it works. Doesn't matter how you put it on because the head turns all the way around. So we're going to stick this one swivel hook on, and we're going to make sure that our seam side right here is up, and our unseam side, once you put the swivel hook on, we're going to make sure that the unseam side is up now. So like the non-seam side. So make sure now that your strapping stays straight. It doesn't twist. And we're going to put our strapping back through here. So we're going to go over where this X is. This is the seam side, and this is the non-seam side. So you should have the non-seam side up in your hand. Go through the strapping after you put that swivel hook on, and go through the other side of the strapping, or the other side of the slider, sorry. And that will give you, a strap that's movable, and you have the swivel hook on, and that seam is all on the inside now. So you should have a strap that has no seams. All right, now we're going to come down to the other side. And this one is on. We don't have to do anything else with this. Okay. Now we're going to come down to the other side and take this piece, and we're going to put it through this swivel hook. And again, you're going to want to fold that over about 1.5 inches, which I should mark that. Let me mark that first, where that 1.5 inches is. 1.5 inches. Not quite on a stripe this time, but pretty close. And I'm going to take my iron and take those off when we're done here. Okay. I'm going to stick this through here. And then we're going to fold this over. And now you should have your seam sides touching. Before we sew anything, make sure that from this swivel hook all the way back to the slider to this swivel hook has the seam sides, or unseam sides, I'm sorry. The unseam sides should all be up. Okay? So your seamed sides at this point should touch each other. And that's 1.5 inches at the end of that. And we're going to do exactly what we did to put the slider on. And we're going to make a box and sew the X and around the box again to hold this part on. And that's basically your strap. So like this. And later on, we're going to put this pad together and we're going to put the strap through the pad, which is not a problem. All right, so let's go ahead and sew this together. Again, if you want to draw a box, you can. I'm going to sort of wing it here. It's nice that Sarah picked a fabric that has some straight lines on it. It makes it easier to sew some things. I'm living on the wild side here. I'm just holding this strap together. Swivel. Okay, I'm back where I started, so I'm gonna make my box, going all the way around. Or I made my box. I'm gonna make my X now. And if you have that seam guide tape on your machine like I do, it's easier to do a diagonal line. So let me cut this thread out of the way because it's gonna get stuck in here. There we go. Now I'm going to go the opposite direction. And again, I'm going to go all the way, I'm going to do the X again, and then go all the way around the box again. So I just want to make sure this is super secure, it doesn't pull out. Move up here and do the other side. My whole thing when I make these is I want to make sure that I go around the whole thing at least 2 or 3 times. Again, you don't have to do this much. I am just OCD this way, and I want to make sure everything stays really secure. And then I started at the top up here, so this will be the last stitch line I make. I'm just gonna backstitch. Okay, there we go. Let me trim the threads. That looks pretty good. All right, I'm happy with that. So there's our strap so far. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this to my ironing board and I'm gonna iron these marks off. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna make the carrying strap tabs. So that is part B on page 4. So if you want to grab all that, we will put that together next. Okay, so I'm going to set these aside. This is my original strap, all done. And this is the strap for Sarah's bag. That piece is all done, which is nice. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make, in section 2 on page 4, we're going to make pieces B through F. And they're all going to be made exactly like we just did the big strap, except they're smaller, which is nice. That'll it's a lot easier to manipulate the smaller pieces. So what I've done is I've laid out all the pieces for A through F, they're all going to be made exactly like we made the big strap. You're going to fold them in half with right sides together, stitch them on one side, turn them. These are all going to be tubes, and these are all going to get these pieces of strapping inside. Now, the piece B, which is up here, this is actually 2 straps. They are going to get these D-rings, and this is what is going to go on the sides of your bag that you're going to clip that big long carry strap that we just made onto eventually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and sew all these together, turn the tubes, and then the pieces that don't need anything additional added to them, we are going to fold the edges in like we did on the big strap, and you're going to top stitch around them. So all of these bits here, you're going to do the same thing. Now, when it comes to this piece here, which is E, step E, you're going to sew this whole tube together and turn it, and then you're going to cut the size pieces that it mentions in the pattern to add these little strap pieces to. Okay, so these are important for later. These are going to go on the fronts of your bag where your clips are going to go, your swivel hooks and your D-rings to hold the bag shut. So make sure you check those out, what you need to cut after you make the tube. You want to make the tube first because you don't want to be making a bunch of little 2.5 inch or whatever size tubes for these little bitty pieces. So we're going to make one long tube and we're going to cut the pieces we need and then put the strapping in. So for all these pieces, go ahead and make them all at one time. I feel like that's a little bit easier. It's going to go faster. The same process we did the big strap, like I said. Right sides together, sew down the one side, put the strapping in, stitch out, like make sure you fold the raw edges in, do the 1/8 of an inch all the way around, and set all of those aside except for the B piece, which we're going to add these D-rings to. So I'm going to go ahead and do all these bits, but I will come back when I'm ready to put the D-rings on and show you how to do that. All right, well, I've got all my tubes made and turned and pressed, except this last one. I thought maybe I would show you how to use a tube turner if you decide to get one, because there are so many in this project. It might be a good idea to get one. Okay, so you take the bigger piece, and this is kind of like a dowel rod, like a skinny one, and then this is kind of like a PVC pipe. But if you're clever enough, you could probably go to the hardware store and get this stuff, but they do have these tube turner kits like on Amazon and stuff. All right, so you push the fabric, you bunch it all up, and then you push some in the tube, and then you take your other part and you push it through until it comes out on the other side, and that can take a few minutes. But once you see a peak of fabric on the other side, go ahead and grab that. You can put that stick down, and then, like magic, you can just pull it through, and it turns your entire tube. And it just makes it a lot quicker and easier to turn it. So that's why I thought I'd share that with you guys today. All right, so I'm going to put that aside. This is the last one I have to press. So I'm going to press this guy, and then put the straps inside around all of these. Stitch them up, and then we'll come back and add the D-rings to the set in B, in section 2, step B. Those ones need D-rings. All the rest we're going to set aside, and I'm also going to keep the little tags that says what they are attached to them even after I finish them, so that way, because there's a few that are the same size, that way we don't get them confused or mixed up. So I'm going to go ahead and press this one, fix all these, and come back and we'll do the D-rings. Okay, so all the strap pieces are now made. I've got them all labeled still and set aside. And then for step B, these are the carrying strap tabs for the sides of the bag where you're going to strap on that long strap that we just made in the first part of this step. So we need to add a D-ring to each one of these. And it's just going to go right, we're going to fold these in half. It's going to go right on the end there. Now, it says in the instructions to bring ends together and pin at the bottom to secure. I'm going to show you guys really quick. This is the side of the bag that I already made, so this is where it's going to go. There's no stitching this down or in place, but eventually we're going to make a stitch there and make to hold everything where they want us to. But for now, it's just saying to pin this down and then make markings on each of these straps at a certain distance, depending on if you're making the small or the large bag. So instead of pinning these, which I think is really, you know, I don't like pins. You guys know that if you've been following me for a long time. And I don't particularly want to pin it and then put it aside and then later on pick it up and stab myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew. I'm going to sew these two together. And if you have a machine that can handle thicker items, you won't have a problem with this. But if you don't, then that could be an issue because it gets pretty thick with two sets of straps sewn together. But my machine can go through this, so I'm going to go ahead and sew these together rather than pinning. I would rather sew them than stick myself later. Okay. And then now what you need to do is take whatever measurements it's saying and mark them on your pieces. Let me grab my marking pen here and my ruler. And it looks like if you're doing the larger size bag, which is what I'm doing, we need to go up. For the higher marking, we need to go to 7 inches, which is not quite to the D-ring, but almost. Actually, it might be better to measure it on the mat. Yeah. And this is, again, a friction pin, so no problem. And then, let's see, the next measurement is 6 1/4. So 6 1/4. And I'm just sort of eyeballing this. This is where we're going to sew the little square markings. And instead of using the mat or the ruler, I'm just marking them side by side. Okay. Now, let's see. It's not saying to sew these right now, and I'm not sure why, because I know later on we do sew them. Again, let me grab the bag that I already made. If you can see there, it's sewn. And that might be, I'm not sure why. It might be that we sew it there onto the side pocket, but I can't remember because it's been a minute since I've done it. So we're going to put these aside because it does not say to sew them right now. So those are done. All the other pieces are made. Hang on, let me clip this together with the little tag. All the other pieces are made except for, well, this is made too, but F, you have to, letter F, you have to add your hook and loop tape or your Velcro. And we are attaching the soft side instead of the hook side onto our piece here. So what it's saying to do is attach the loop side of the 1.5 inch hook and loop tape to the seamed side of the strap. So this is the unseamed side. So I'm going to flip this over and get to the seam side. And it says center it on the strap just above the top stitch finish edge and sew around it twice for added security. Okay. And it also has a tip in here that a little glue from a glue stick. So I'm going to use this 505 temporary glue stick. and put glue on the back of my Velcro tape and stick this in place. Oops, got some on my mat. Luckily that 505 comes right off. It's kind of like the 505 basting spray, but it's a glue. And I'm going to stick this in place. Now my hands are all gluey. All right, I'm going to wipe my hands off and then we'll sew this. Okay, so I've got that stuck on there with glue. I'm going to go ahead and stitch all the way around that. And you're just going to stitch like 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the Velcro all the way around. And it said to go around twice. I actually think that I may go around 3 times because this is going to be one of those places in your bag that you use a lot. Like you Velcro on Velcro and it could come off if the stitching for some reason would wear off or tear. Okay, there we go. All right, so that is all sewn on. I'm going to trim that here in a little bit. But what I am going to do before I lose it is I'm going to stick the other half of the hook and loop on here, because otherwise I would probably lose that side, knowing me. So that is all done. And the last piece we're going to do today is on page 5, because we've moved on to page 5 now. In section 2, it's G. And that is making the padded handle. So you're going to need your padded handle fabric and then your soft and stable for the padded handle. Now this is what's going to go on the top of the bag. Let me grab my bag. That's this piece right here, this padded handle. So we're going to go ahead and make this piece, and then this will be the last piece that we make together today. You can keep sewing if you want, but because there is a holiday coming up Monday, I am going to go ahead and put up the next video on Monday, and that will be the next section, I believe, is the pockets. So we're going to start working on the pockets and the zippers. So that's going to be fun. Okay, so to make this padded handle, we're going to fold it in half, and we're going to give it, you can either press it with an iron or you can finger press it. I'm going to go ahead and press it with my iron just lightly. Actually, my iron's not very hot because it had turned itself off, so that's good enough. And then we're going to open it back up. If I can get it open. And then we're going to press towards the center, where that mark that we just made with our iron. Just like that, both sides. Okay, now, let's see. We want to put the soft and stable inside. Just like this. And we're going to fold this all in half together. And then I'm going to press it because I think it'll make it easier. We're going to fold this all in half together. And then we're going to top stitch this. You know what I'm going to do though, guys, is I'm going to use some glue to stick this because it's wanting to kind of move and not stay where I put it. You don't have to do this glue step. I just think it's going to be easier to hold it. This is going to be really hard to hold the fabric and the soft and stable to flip it all over. There we go. That's so much better. Yep. So I recommend some glue for that part. And get that nice and flat. And then I'm actually even going to put a little glue here. Glue came in handy today because this whole thing needs to be folded in half. And it's thick because you've got 2 layers of soft and stable. So I'm just using the glue to help me get it to stick or get it to fold over and stay. I don't even know how much it's going to stay, but we're going to see. If not, we'll have to fold it as we sew. I don't honestly remember how I did this last time. I might have just held it. I do remember this was not so super fun. So, all right, it didn't want to stay, so we'll just fold it as we sew, and we're gonna top stitch it all the way around. And you're gonna want to also make sure you fold in your ends so you don't have any raw edges. So a little tricky to get it all together. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use some clips. There's that. Now, it looks like my edges aren't going to be perfect, but that's okay because those edges are actually going to be hidden when we put the bag together. So, if you can't completely hide it, don't worry. Now I'm going to put a few clips on this just to hold it a little bit. I'm going to borrow the clips from the markers. All right. I'm going to start with sewing this side. my bad. I wasn't paying close enough attention and I ran off the edge. So I'm going to just pick that out and continue on. Well, when I look at what we finished today, it looks like we didn't do a whole lot, but getting all these straps done, they're actually they're very time consuming. So after this, some of the pieces should go a little bit faster, but I'm glad to have them done. So I'm going to show you guys those really quick again. Here's some of the straps, the little tabs. These are going to go on the front of the bag. These are all for various different things. These are the sides of the bag where we're going to clip on that long handle that we made, which I put away already. Here's another short piece, and then our padded handle for the top of the bag. It's really nice to have a padded handle. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Again, this coming Monday, Martin Luther King Day, I'm going to have the next video, which is sewing some of the pockets and getting some of the zippers done. And we're going to start to see some progress on this bag, which is really fun. This kind of utility stuff, it's kind of boring and it takes quite a bit of time. But once you get it done, then you can move on to the rest of the bag, and the rest of the bag goes a little bit faster. So I'm really excited to move on and get that done. And I hope to see some progress from you guys too. Don't forget to post some pictures of your progress in my Facebook group. If you have not a member of my Facebook group, you can join Together We Sew Quilting, and the link for that is down in the description box below. Also, don't forget about the UFO challenge I mentioned at the beginning of this video. If you don't know what that is, I made a video on it, so you can go watch that. I hope you'll join us. A lot of people have so far, and I'm really excited about that, and I'm hoping that it will encourage me to get some of mine done as well. I also started the 365 challenge, and I was going to post a video about it last Sunday, but I did not have enough fabrics of the colors that I wanted to do. So this week I spent in sort of gathering up fabrics, and I started a few blocks, and then I had to gather some more fabrics. So I'm going to make a video on that for you guys for tomorrow. I promise. I know I said last Sunday, but this Sunday, and show you what I'm talking about, the 365 quilt challenge. My friend Kevin got me sort of roped into this, and I'm glad he did. I'm having a lot of fun. I've got a few blocks to catch up to get up to the date we're on, but the first few blocks are really easy, so you can still catch up at this point. You're not behind. All right, well, that's all for today. Keep stitching, and I hope to see you tomorrow and Monday. Bye.